All right, everybody, good morning. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, weirdos, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
The list slowly grows over time.
Yeah. We just get worse and worse.
That's right. I'm waiting for more to occur, which I'm sure it will.
Yeah, I feel like we should get some creativity in this area in the last couple of weeks here before the election, right?
Yeah.
Surely Democrats getting desperate to come up with something, right?
Yeah. Though, I'm not sure that Kamala is capable of coming up with anything like this. That's the thing.
Yeah, Walls came up with weirdos. It wasn't even her.
Yeah.
Walls calling people weirdos.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
this is a strange guy, man.
Yeah,
unusual person to be in politics.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we'll be discussing lots of politics today. That's for sure. I'll do the weather thing because that's what I traditionally like to start off with. So, weather in the area here has been pretty good. Haven't had a whole lot of rain lately, really.
No, it's been a while since it rained. Crisp, cool fall air. It's like 48 out there now.
Yeah, and I went out. I went out to the car this morning, and I'm like, there's like a light frost on the car, and I'm like, what?
Yeah,
I was a little concerned that this is where we were going. Looking ahead at Apple weather on the iPhone is notoriously kind of just not great. But so I kind of look at it as a guide, and I'm like, it's getting close to that range, and things like that. But I still didn't want it. And I'm like, I walk out and I'm like, okay, I may have to start taking some countermeasures here if it keeps like this. And my wife was like, it's like, I need socks.
yeah. We're to that stage.
Yeah. So I don't know. Does it feel like it's on time or early or what?
This kind of cold. I think we're a little early. Like
that's what I feel.
A month early.
Yeah, I thought that we could still slide a little bit more. Maybe towards the end of October before we start. Because Halloween can get cold. It can also be nice.
Yeah.
So.
And like the Friday night football this week, they'll be playing in the 30s. It'll be the games will be over. It'll still be in the 40s, but they're supposed to be mid 30s Friday night. So
yeah, that's cold. I mean,
it's tough to be outside. I'm gonna go anyway, though. My son's playing.
Yeah. Well, you're not a cheerleader, so you won't be wearing any skimpy outfits.
No, that's by vote of the crowd.
I don't know. I mean, how about that? How about get some old dads being the cheerleaders for once or something?
Yeah.
That'll keep the crowds away.
3 or 4 guys in traction.
Yeah, that would be quite a sight. I don't know. Strange things pop up in my mind as we go through the show. That's why we're basically unscripted, because you just never know what's going to happen.
You never know.
You never know. All right. Well, but on to that too. It's just so we're North Carolina still, and Florida, they're still cleaning up from Helene and Milton. And there's still a lot of people without power in those areas, and there's still a ton of debris. And there's something like 92 people, I think, that are unaccounted for in California, in North Carolina. So they're still not there yet, anywhere, or maybe anywhere close to being where they need to be.
Yeah, I saw Bob. Even cool down, and he lives right outside of New Orleans. So, so yeah. What were we talking about?
Oh, I was just saying the cleanup in.
It's not right there. Well, I mean, they're still rescuing people, according to what the speaker said yesterday. That there's people that are so far up in the mountains that they haven't gotten to them yet, and the roads are impassable. So it's hard, work. It's hard, detailed work to get it all the people. and travel to places, rebuild roads, rebuild infrastructure, get people back online. One of the big issues there, they got the Starlink. Is they've given everybody Starlink. Before that, there was like a lot of people that had no connectivity. There was no way to do it, and it's not sure there's enough Starlink. There's enough bandwidth or whatever. So they're having to add more. The general consensus, though, the people on the ground, is that the FEMA has been either a no-show or actively undermining efforts. So, I think that one of the good things that will come out of this presidential election is new leadership at a lot of the federal agencies, including FEMA. Obviously, the Secret Service, so their clock will get completely cleaned after January 20th.
Yeah, I mean, and I did see a story, I guess, because I guess Congress they're still in recess, right?
Yeah. So I think they may be back this part of this week. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but I guess the disaster business assistance money has completely run dry in FEMA.
Right.
So
a lot of it diverted to putting up illegals in New York City hotels too. I mean, they want to say that it's a separate pot. Well, we'd have had more for this pot if we wouldn't have put stuff in that pot, which we don't really understand why there is a pot for settling people for it's illegal, giving free house to people who are here illegally. Why don't you just give them a free boat ride out?
Yeah, and with Starlink too. I mean, there was stories about that whole rural broadband thing. This doesn't mean every place in Florida or North Carolina, but I mean, there, like every part of the country, there's always going to be some areas that are extremely rural and are just too far away from a cell phone tower.
It's mountainous, and it's mountains with foliage, which is the hardest combination because it's harder to see. Radio signals are weaker, So I mean, that's really a tough part of the country for this to have happened in.
Yeah. So, but I was reading about how, I guess the government's they had this whole rural broadband program, and I guess Kamala was part of this whole thing, and Elon Musk had made a bid that they turned down, right? I mean,
right.
What has been demonstrated by Musk and Starlink is that this is a proven technology that he can get those things up there fairly quickly, and it can give you some instantaneous communication. I mean, it's not Wi-Fi, it's not wired Ethernet, the things that are better, but boy, it's a lifeline when you can't do anything else. If you have no electricity or anything else, you just got a phone. But if you can hook it up to a Starlink, then you've got something where you can at least tell people where the heck you are and have something. Right. So the government, once again, under this administration, blew it again in terms of this. And I don't know if that's
what's being shown here is like we're reaching a point where before, say 30 years ago, there weren't a lot of private 30, 40 years ago, there weren't a lot of private businesses with the capabilities of doing anything significant about a storm, right? There was those who could help clear leaves, and there were electric companies that could restore power. But I mean, government had to be the leader in this, and government had to be the source of the resources because, nobody really had that at scale. Well, now, you have people like Elon Musk who can come in and connect everybody immediately. You have people who can come in and, search and rescue and make all this happen privately. People didn't down there, they got tired of waiting on the government. And so there's a large, huge private effort in the mountains, North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, to among private people to go find it. Supposedly there's a bunch of people at Fort Bragg who are staged and ready to go help. And the government, for whatever reason, didn't pull the trigger on that. It just left them there and didn't order them into the situation. So it started getting done by private entities. It's the same as like the Cajun Navy down on the coast, right? It's just people say, I'm going to go help other people that I don't know, and they go help them. And that's one of the really great moving things about America, right? And but now technology has allowed those people to have the reach and the capability of actually displacing government in a lot of those functions. Yeah, it is. It is beautiful country. It's some of the prettiest country in the world in there where this happened. But it is hard. It's difficult country. It's difficult. It's really sharp cliffs and mountains and so forth, and a lot of foliage.
Yeah, I drove through the Smoky Mountains a few years ago when I was going to visit an elderly friend of ours, and I was like, that's that can be a little treacherous, and
Oh yeah,
then you get to through the fog, and you're like, I don't want to do this again.
it's tough. We have to go there. We go through there a lot going home, going to Louisiana.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's like, I'm like, okay, why am I doing this? All right.
That's right.
So, anyway, I do want to back to Bob's earlier point about being overjoyed about the height. I don't think I'd have a problem with, if it was overnight lows in the 40s, because that probably means that you're going to get into the, mid to upper 50s or maybe even 60s during the day. That's pretty reasonable weather. It says once it starts dipping into the 30s, I'm like, what am I doing? When I wake up in the morning, I'm kind of like, okay, how am I approaching this day to go to the gym? Because once again, I go to the gym very early in the morning, so it's about as cold as it's going to be, when you're leaving the house at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm like, yeah, what am I wearing here exactly? How much, I'd rather not have to go and put stuff in a locker and do that. And then I'd rather just go straight to my elliptical machine or whatever and just change my shoes or whatever and just drop my stuff and then do it. And then I can walk out and whatnot. But now, where I can see, I'm looking like I'm getting to the point where I'm going to have to start doing that again. It's going to be those months of I'm going to be wearing, the puffer jacket or whatever as it gets colder. And I can't just carry that stuff all the way around the gym all the time. But that's we that's part of the reason that we live here, really, is the change of seasons.
Yeah.
It's I don't appreciate ice and snow as much as I used to. It's particularly snow, but I know it's part and parcel of living here, is that those are always things are going to be colder weather during the winter months, warmer weather in the summer months. It's a pretty good place to be overall.
Yeah.
And everything like that. But then to his point, without FEMA mucking up, and that goes to your point. I mean, this is the thing, is that the government will muck it up. Like you said, Cajun Navy. I think that what we have learned in these last few decades really is that really we have to do a lot of things ourselves. Is just go ahead, whether or not it's a private entity that's actually someone charging for it or being contracted out, or whether or not it's just a group of volunteers. I think that is, the spirit of America with the entrepreneurship and just the willingness to help each other, people in trouble. That's what America, that's us. And that's far better than waiting for a government bureaucrat to make a decision as to, oh, we can't go there yet because, right? They've got a checklist. Oh, here's the reasons we can or can't go in until we can go in. It's like, no, human lives are at stake here. Every second counts. Don't wait. I mean, this is you go and do it. And if people are there, I mean, how many times have we seen people willing to risk their lives, and some have lost their lives rescuing others? My hat's off to people who will take that into their situation in their own hands like that and just try to do something to save someone else. So I think I'm glad that that's somewhat inherent in the American way in doing that. But I mean, and then I think about Governor DeSantis, and I thought, well, I think he's probably doing as much, if not more, than he could possibly do, given these pretty much back-to-back major storms that have hit, and trying to make sure that things are in good order and they're restoring power as quickly as they can, and all that. But I think I mentioned this last week. I mean, I think we will see maybe at least a temporary flattening of movement into Florida until people can get a clearer vision of what that's going to look like, for homes. Can we buy a home? Can we get insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So, and there's some people who just never leave Florida. They just love it there.
It's like Yogi Berra said, it's so popular, nobody goes there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Yogi I need.
It's kind of true in that one, you know.
Yeah, it is. I need a book of yogiisms. I'm sure there's something out there for that. But instead of just kind of piecemealing it
Yeah, when
together.
people ask me who the most famous people I've ever met, I always, it's three guys with one name, right? Obama, Elvis, Yogi. That's a pretty good three,
That's pretty. Yeah, that's good. I like that. All right. Well, we'll head overseas a little bit here. We mainly for Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah. Activity there, rockets being fired back and forth, drones being used, and the U.S. is sending over these THAAD missiles and troops to operate them. I guess they're kind of complex and everything that they need that to do that. But yeah,
we don't want to train anybody how to do it either.
Yeah.
That is our own anti-air missile device, and so we're kind of kept close.
Yeah, so I'm glad that we're doing that.
But he's also saying, if they don't start speeding up humanitarian aid and rebuilding the rebuilding of Gaza and so forth, he's going to cut off all assistance to Netanyahu, to Israel.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. So I'm like, okay, so you're sending the anti-missile defense system and the troops, and then on the other hand, you're saying this other thing, and it's like, who are you? What are you doing? Yeah. What's the message that you're sending?
The message is Michigan, please vote for Kamala. Right? That's the message. Like, oh no, don't do that. Don't go to Trump, right? Because it looks like they're going to Trump. Yeah, I believe that. I don't think the Muslims think that like Trump is going to come out on their side against Israel, but I think that they think, and I believe this to be true, that he will make this end, right? One way or the other, it's going to be over soon. He's going to put pressure on everybody until it does. Yeah, that's right. That it's anti-air missiles. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I try to listen to a wide variety of things. I mean, I mostly listen for podcasts. I mostly listen to tech and some business and some sports and whatnot. And then there's some politics in there. So, the 538 podcast, which is not a conservative podcast by any stretch of imagination, they did an episode recently on just polling across the country, and not just presidential polling, but they also went down into some local polling for congressional offices and whatnot. But one of the things they were pointing out was just how sometimes the ads they're targeted in areas that we don't really think about or know about. And I really haven't been thinking about it, but they played an ad, a Harris ad, that was targeted at those people that are supporting Palestine and Hamas, right? This is not an ad you will see nationally. This is an ad targeted at a group of people specifically to try to win their vote. And thinking like, yeah, okay. I just think that in the case of Harris, extremely two-faced on these issues. She's trying to get both sides of the argument here and not really take a stand. I mean, once again, just reinforcing that we have not seen we're all behind Netanyahu all the way. They always keep qualifying it by doing something like you mentioned. If you don't help rebuild Gaza or do some humanitarian aid to Gaza, we will pull our support. In the meantime, we'll still send you this anti-missile defense system and whatnot. And so that they send these mixed messages to people. My wife is like why do Jewish people want to still vote Democrat after they watch this? And some of it's longstanding, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they view Democrats as the anti-discrimination party, and fairly or unfairly, and they're sensitive to being discriminated against. So that's why it's been that way for a long time. I'm starting to see it change a lot now. I think Trump is ahead among Jews right now in the polling by about 6%.
And I think too, part of that is just that Democrats, people like that they also look at the Democrats as being more compassionate because they have funded welfare programs. They will do they'll go they'll bend over backwards to do things for the poor, as if actually throwing money at the problem is going to solve the problem.
Right.
But that has been a long held kind of belief by the Democrats is to have all these myriad of welfare programs, and so that fits into their whole thing there too. Yeah, I mean, I
Right.
think
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And there was also
yeah,
firefighters yesterday also refused to endorse her. So, a lot of people are walking away as best they can.
yeah,
Teamsters Teamsters didn't endorse because the vote was like 61-35 for Trump among the members. And then some of the locals went out and said, "Oh no, we endorse her," and their members also said 60-35 for Trump. So you might get some changes in leadership with Teamsters as a result of this.
yeah. I mean, I think there's some genuine panic going on in the Harris camp among Democrats about what is going on here. Is that the momentum seems to have clearly shifted to Trump. The betting market, huge shift. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of check in on this once or twice a day, and I'm astounded at what a big flip we've had because I'd been talking about we'd been at 50-50 or very close to that for a few weeks after the debate, and then Trump started to make a little bit of an inroad. Then he kind of had a little bit of a pop, where he got to like 53, but he went to early this morning. He went to like 60%.
Yeah.
Now the betting market is not the election, by any
Right.
stretch of imagination, but it is a kind of an inkling of where people are thinking. So people are thinking about which way this election is likely to go,
Right.
and so that is, I think that is a little bit of a warning signal. I think if you're a Harris person, that you're like, okay, these things are not going well for us. And then there was the CNN poll, where they're showing that over the last several years, they're polling of people in terms of which way, which way they're going. So I had listed here is in 2016 it was D+3, 2020 it was D+6, 2024 it's R+1.
Right. That's a
And so
seismic gap. First
that,
time
that
Republicans have been ahead in 40 years in
yeah,
overall registrations. Those people are not signing up to vote for Kamala Harris.
yeah.
That's not what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to get you still have to get the people to the polls or get them to vote
Yep.
by mail or whatever. But yeah, you're right. It's a seismic shift that we're seeing in that. And to me that's despite the fact that I think Trump is still kind of off the rails a lot of times, but it still finds his way. The message still seems to resonate. Nevertheless, he can do things like no other person on the campaign trail can. It's just amazing. I don't know what I really kind of wonder. What happens post this election. I mean, this is his last shot, right? In terms, I mean, he wins. That's it. He's a lame duck. Where can JD Vance carry the message forward after that, or will others come in there? And are we going to start shifting back to the way things used to be? I mean, this is still years away, but it'll be kind of interesting to see because Trump has made such a strong imprint upon the Republican Party that it's Trump and the Republican Party are really they are tied at the hip, at this point. And so I see locally, and I was seeing this, when I was on the Central Committee here locally, that that was what it was starting to divide the Central Committee, where the pro-Trump and the anti-Trump or the never-Trump people was that, and so you have these people, you have this divide that's going on there, but where's Kamala Harris once again? What does she say? Her whole argument still seems to be, I'm not Donald Trump. That's not
Yeah.
really a winning. That's not a winning message compared to say 2020, when when Joe Biden could make that case as few times as he appeared in public and do that, and people were just tiring. now people are probably as tired of the whole Biden-Harris administration as they were of just saying, we were
Yeah,
tired
the
of.
memories of Trump have now become a lot better. Looking back over, like you can see the end of the COVID story, and you can see that, Trump actually did a better job with COVID than Biden did. You can see the end of the economic story, and you can see that, Trump's answers had us at full employment. We had 1.5 million more jobs than job seekers. Household income going up nearly $7,000, some $7,000 per house, not 700,000. We'd all be rich then. People are starting to say, okay, looking back on what actually happened, Trump did a better job as president. And there's a phalanx of voters. Now basically what you have is she has 92% of her base, he has 92% of his base, and he's ahead about 8 or 9 among independents. So. And now his base is now 1% bigger than her base. So, just a base election, he would win. And a 1%, if Trump is 1% ahead, it's about 330 electoral votes, right? If he's even, it's 312. So even he wins, right? So that's another thing people need to understand. It needs to be about Harris +2 for her to have a chance to win.
Yeah, I don't know. You kind of think about all of these things that are going on out there with Harris and Trump. I mean, if I'm Donald Trump, I'm probably thinking too. It's like I want to thank Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for making the case for why I need to be elected president. It's their track record over the last 3.5+ years that is basically helping Trump make his case. And I don't think that Trump, necessarily had to go, because we've talked about this in terms of, he's thrown a lot of economic policies out there that are not really conservative in nature. They're trying to win votes, and they're almost kind of going tit for tat with the Democrats. I don't necessarily think he has to do that because he has his base. They're going to vote for him anyway. The others probably are not going to be swayed too much by some of the things that he's saying in that regard, and just hammering away at how the Biden-Harris administration, how bad things were over this last 3.5 plus years by comparison to his time in office, even with COVID. That in and of itself is the case, and should be enough for a lot of people to say, yeah, that's why, and get past the personality issues, because Donald Trump is not going to change the personality. That's Donald Trump is Donald Trump.
That's right. But he's also, he's made some points. The no taxes on tips and no taxes on what was the other one? Overtime. I don't think that you can get those to pass. I think he'll be saved from himself by Congress on that. There has been a little inclination to try to buy some votes. Buying them by cutting taxes doesn't bother me personally, because the less tax they have, the less damage they can do. But hers is pretty much like there's the message for the new message for Black men the other day, and they're all like, why do you need a message for us? Why doesn't your thing just work? So there's a lot of that kind of like really sophomoric kind of stuff coming out at the end, because she realizes that people did want to know what you would do policy wise before they elect you.
Yeah, and that whole program, all these things that she wants to do, targeting at Black men, it just, I guess I partially came out of Obama trying to kind of wagging his finger about.
It's kind of modeled on COVID response, because it's just a big cash transfer, forgivable loans, very low amount. I mean, so they're going to give forgivable loans to start a new business. Okay, well, what do you have to do to prove you're starting a new business? And do you have to already have it started? Do you have to have a plan? Do you have to have a loan to start with from somebody else? Right? There's a lot of stuff to fill in the blanks there. But the thing about starting business is, you're putting your own money into it. right? So the money you lose will be your money. You are the one who will not be able to eat if this doesn't work, right? So that drives a lot of entrepreneurs. It's 8 o'clock at night. I got 2 hours of work to do. If it depends on me eating, I'm there till 10. I don't come back the next morning, right? So, that's the kind of desire that it takes to make it as a business person, as an entrepreneur, as a start stuff from scratch type of person, and now you're saying, we'll give you a little cushion so you don't really have to do that. And that's not how this works. It would not work on its own. And, it just looks like another scam government program.
Yeah. And then we all pay for it.
Yeah.
We all pay for
it. The other thing is like, she keeps talking about, I'm going to reduce prices, but I'm going to keep increasing government spending, which increases inflation. And I'm going to jack taxes on the people who set prices, corporations and high earners, right? Those are the people who, if you increase their taxes, they're going to up prices to get their money back, right? So they're the very people that you don't. If your idea is to lower costs, lower prices, when she goes on, she has this little whole sympathetic riff she does about how prices are too high. We got to do something for Americans at the grocery store and all this stuff, but what she's supposed to do is ludicrous, right? You're going to tax the people who could lower the prices, and so drive up their costs, and you want to go after an industry with 2.5% profit margins for price gouging, right? There's no price gouging in groceries. There's very little because you can't make any money if you price gouge. So, they're not all in it together. It's a dirty race to the bottom business, right? And it's you're dealing with a lot of vendors, a lot of transportation costs, all that kind of stuff. You're trying to eke out a 2.5% profit, and she wants to investigate them for price gouging. It's just like, it's detached from reality. And, and I think anybody that stops for 5 minutes and thinks about this, cannot figure out how she gets a single vote. But she will get at least a single vote. The nearly 100-year-old idiot Jimmy Carter voted for. So will not be shut out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the basic concept of that. I mean, when she went after the grocery stores and attacked them for price gouging, it's like you don't have no idea. I mean, as you mentioned, they've run on a razor thin margin, and all of this. Can they make a profit in the long run overall? Yeah, they can. But I mean, there are costs. They're not just because you make a profit does not mean you're gouging the customer. Right. I mean, a business cannot stay in business without making a profit. There are, the whole thing is extremely wrong-headed in that.
And you're gonna tell them like how much profit is appropriate, right, for each product. For dishwashing liquid and toilet paper and Campbell's soup and tomatoes. You got to set the appropriate profit level for all of those things. Yeah, I saw. I don't know if you saw the picture that of Carter. He's back there. He doesn't know where he is. Right, he's barely alive. So I mean, I'm not sure that a vote from someone like that should count, whoever it's for. But he's totally out of it.
Yeah, I mean, but in this. It's kind of the same thing when, because what are the Democrats' favorite things to do? Is they want to attack corporations for price gouging, right? They do that with the oil industry. They've been doing that forever. They always want to have this excess profits tax. They're making too much money. We've got to tax those profits and then redistribute those. And things like this. Well, what about the times when, under COVID, when they lose money? What are you doing there? These airlines, sometimes they've come under fire for high airfares, but their airfares are, it's competitive balance and everything like that. They earn money, they lose money. And they have to have that ability to make a profit and be there for the times when things may not be quite so rosy, particularly when you're dealing with things that are very commoditized and very dependent upon the consumer buying your product. And there's just no guarantee that the consumer is going to come back to your particular store or gas pump, whatever, or take your particular airline. I mean, look at look at Southwest Airlines, kind of like the model of low cost airfare, carrier, highly profitable, envy of the industry for decades. And now they've run into their own kind of turbulence problem. They've got an Elliott Management activist investor has gone in there, taken a stake, and he's shaking things up. And come about a year from now, or just under a year from now, there's going to be a whole different look to how Southwest sells tickets, boards people on their planes, and things like that. And they'll look a lot more like the rest of the air carriers.
Yeah.
And so they're adapting to what they have to do because their system was not really working anymore. I mean, and I've been on Southwest many times, and I always do find that the whole boarding process is a little stressful. So I pay for the boarding, automatic boarding where they tell me when I'm boarding, rather than having to go there and go click 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 until make at the 24-hour mark and do that and get my assignment in advance. But it's still open seating. I don't mind the open seating, though there were some abuses of that, going in there. But it'll be interesting to see how radically they change that, and whether or not they still have the loyalty of some flyers when they do change that policy.
Yeah, because their policies, a lot of people rode them because they did things differently.
Right.
So they make a move back toward like everybody else does. They're going to lose some.
Yeah, they will. And I know, like for us, we still have a son out in Utah, and really the only option we had was to fly into Salt Lake City Airport, right, International Airport. But it's not, that's 45 minutes away or thereabouts from Provo, Orem, where we normally go down to where my brother-in-law lives. My son lives a little closer, than that. But now there's a whole new option because the Provo Airport is expanding, and they've American Airlines has now added. They've started a flight or two. You can fly from Provo to Dallas. So we could fly from DC to Dallas and into Provo, or even better, Breeze Airlines, which is actually another David Neeleman airline. I mean, he's done Morris Air, he's Breeze, he's JetBlue. He worked, he did he sold Morris Air to Southwest. He knows the airline industry. The guy's just a serial entrepreneur with airlines, and there's a direct flight between Dulles and Provo 3 times a week. And we look at this thing and we're like, yeah, we can spend a little bit more money per person, but we'll get like a 2x2 seat, kind of like first class, for the fraction of the cost of doing anything like that to get to Salt Lake. And we're 15 minutes away from where my brother-in-law lives, and which is our base operation. It's like, this just makes a whole lot of sense, is that we can go point to point, and we just avoid this huge airport in Salt Lake that requires you to walk forever. So, the competition, Southwest gets most of my business these days because we're flying direct to Phoenix or direct to, to Utah. But, it's only maybe the Phoenix run that we'll do on Southwest going forward. So these things kind of come and change. But, with Harris, so $20,000 to start a business is not a lot, okay, to begin with in these days. But the fact that it's a government program where there's really no incentive to succeed.
Right. And you're saying only people of certain race are eligible for it. No, that's constitutional, right?
How is that?
Sounds kind of Jim Crow-y to me, but
and then she made this comment about decriminalizing marijuana, and I'm thinking like, okay, so are you trying to say that that the overwhelmingly number of people that are weed smokers are blacks, so therefore I need to decriminalize it to keep them out of jail or whatever?
Yeah, why is that a black issue? I think it's like they don't want them to have, the thing about it is they don't want them to have police records, right?
Yeah.
So the charge is that the police just go bust them for weed, so they can make a file on them. And then the next time they see them, they got a file. Oh, this is your second time, But I mean, if it's illegal, don't do it in the middle of the street, right? I mean, because police are not like going into people's houses to bust them for weed, right? Unless you're selling it by the pound out of your house and they find that out, that's not going to get you busted. What gets you busted is, you're walking down the street, the cop smells weed and he sees you with weed, right? So, this is like, be less public about it. They want to be able to brazenly do something that's illegal and not have any ramifications of it.
Yeah.
It's not about, whatever you think of weed, right? I mean, it's probably going to be decriminalized in the next 4 years anyway, because Trump, he doesn't care about it either. So,
Yeah, I mean, and he probably will take a little more, if he does win and, with the support of people like Elon Musk or Peter Thiel, with more libertarian streaks, that would lead to a more active policy of trying to decriminalize it.
Yeah.
And
I think they can borrow money for the farms and whatnot. I mean, I don't think it's the places that are emphasizing weed and bringing it in are having problems with it. Colorado's had a bunch of more traffic deaths, people dropping out of school, psychotic problems, and so forth. So they really sort of said, hey, we were first, and we were sort of a little regretful. So, so there's some lessons to be learned about this. It's a big difference. People think, it's just like, booze is legal, right? You can get high on booze. Yeah, you can get high on booze, but you can also drink booze and not get high, right? You drink one small glass of wine with your meal. You're not at all high, right? You just had something to drink with your meal, right? But in weed, you don't smoke weed for the flavor. You do it for one reason, right? To get high. So, it's just the government saying it's okay to be high, right? And that's a slippery slope. Some people in Europe have tried that, and turned whole parts of town into, mass heroin dens and so forth. So, I mean, just consider your options when you're doing all this stuff. Consider the ramifications of it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a guy in our neighborhood. So on Sunday morning, if it's not too cold, which has been a little chilly the last few weeks, if we try to go out and walk before we head off to church, both my wife and I are like, okay, we're going to have to alter our walking route slightly, because this young black guy, actually, of all things, he comes out of the house and he goes to the backyard side type of thing, and he sits in a chair, and for about 20 minutes he smokes his joint, right? And so this smell just comes, and my wife hates it. I was like, I've smelled that too often in my life, walking by and being places. It doesn't really faze me, but it's just kind of an annoying smell. And we're thinking like, yeah, we need to just kind of alter our route when we know he's going to be out there, and then when he's gone, we'll be fine. But yeah, it's, New York had a problem because, they set up this whole legalization thing, and illegal shops started to crowd out the legal shops, right? Wall Street went, gaga over companies that went public that were cannabis companies, right? They were in the business of dealing with cannabis, all kinds of cannabis. But those companies have not had a straight upward path because they have been undermined by illegal shops and other operations that they didn't foresee. So there was all this hoopla like, if we decriminalize it, it solves all the problems. No, that's just another set of problems.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
In all of this. So and then there's Kamala's her little dance about reparations is that it needs to be studied. So I don't know. Is she going to? Well, if she gets elected, is she going to have a commission for reparations? Who knows? I don't know.
There's just not a like. One thing is like, Western jurisprudence. Whether you like it or not, you live in a Western country, right? And Western jurisprudence, we have to determine that an individual is responsible for a crime or responsible for a tort, right? Doing something that you can be sued for before we let you take his money or put him in jail, right? And no one alive today is responsible for slavery. No one alive today was a victim of slavery. So who are the victims, and who are the victimizers? Like who owes for this, right? And it's like, it's real easy to just take it out of the big pot, but it's not, right? We don't have any money in the big pot. The big pot is 31 trillion to the bad right now. So, you can, whatever moral argument you try to make, you're not going to get that, right? You can't get blood out of a turnip, and you're not owed it anyway.
Right. That's the thing that always gets me. I mean, you can say reparations for just about anything, or any of these kind of things that are even somewhat equivalent of this. Is just that these movements crop up, and then you look at it, it's like, well, how many of the people who actually were victims of this are around today? And what gives the people of today who were not, affected by this, they were not the victims themselves, the right to claim any kind of money from the government for this? And you're right, this big pot of money supposedly, but there's this, I don't know, is it liberal guilt or whatever you want to call it? There's some kind of guilt mechanism that is, that comes up. There's like, well, we have to take care of this wrong. We got to right this wrong, even if it's been 100 or 200 years or whatever the thing may be. It's like, you don't have to throw money at people who don't deserve the money, have no right to the money.
Right. That's if you want to do that privately, go give all your money to whoever you want to give it to. But you don't get to say my money also should go to that.
Yeah.
Right, because it's a personal, to the extent it's an obligation, it's a personal obligation. It's not a collective obligation.
Yeah, I mean, liberals could. I mean, there are enough wealthy liberals like George Soros and those guys, kind of, right? Yeah. They could set up a foundation to dole out money for reparations, but they're not going to do it. Everybody points at
all these people. Yeah, they talk about it. They don't want to actually contribute to it. So, remember that year they said the government said you could check a box on your tax form and you could pay more if you wanted, to get the things you want done. Just give us a little extra money if you want to. In the whole country, the entire 330 million people, they collected $130 of, take my money and spend it on something else. $130. So, that's the rate of participation Americans want beyond what they're required to do in terms of taxes.
Yeah. I mean, Warren Buffett talks about, that he's all for paying more taxes. Okay, fine. Then go ahead and write a check to the Treasury Department and give them more money.
Don't wait to be required. Just go for
it. Don't ask me to pay more than my fair share, or what I'm obligated to pay, or try to raise it even more. If you're wealthy enough and you want to pay more, then go ahead. It's your money. Go ahead and spend it the way you want to spend it. But they don't do that, do they? At all. They look for other people to share that burden, and say, we've got to do this as a country. No, we don't. No, that's not necessarily the case for all of this that goes on. Just unbelievable. I did want to mention too this Politico story. Saw that talking about Kamala Harris and her operation in Pennsylvania. The Democrats are apparently worried that it's quite a mess there. That I think we know that Pennsylvania is going to be really tough for her to win. It shouldn't necessarily be the case, but I think they've mucked it up here, and Trump has made good inroads, there. I don't know.
The great Scotty Pressler has done extremely valuable work in Pennsylvania. The deficit of there's more Democrats signed up. There's more Democrats signed up to vote in Pennsylvania than there is Republicans, and that'll probably never change. But the difference has been cut from 356,000 to 120,000. So they've really cut it down. They flipped 4 counties to Republican registration. Early ballot requests all over the country are favoring Republicans. Voting open for the first time in Georgia yesterday. The 4 Democrat counties, Gwinnett, Fulton, Cobb, and DeKalb, which is that's literally 90% of the Democrats in Georgia, 103,000 requests. The rest of the state, which is virtually all Republican, 260,000 requests. So the early results are highly favorable for Trump and deeply troubling for Harris. Arizona, they're still netting about 1,500 to 2,000 people a day, adding to the rolls of Republicans in Maricopa County. So they're adding 1,500 to 2,000 a day. Republicans. These people are not signing up to vote for Kamala Harris. They're signing up to vote for Trump. So Trump, among people who have voted in the last 4 elections, Trump is down by about 2 or 3 points. Among people who have voted in 2, 1, or 0 of the last 4 elections, he's ahead by 12 or 13 points. So, and that's who votes in presidential elections. The irregular voter comes out of the woodwork for this election, right? Might not be around for the midterms, might not be around for Virginia's state elections next year, but for this year, they're dialed in. Then they're going to the polls, and I think she knows that. Her campaign knows that. They realize that they are indeed in really deep trouble.
Yeah, I mean, and I think about, as you're talking too about, the media. They have got to be concerned because they don't want Trump back in office, and they seem to be doing all that they can, to portray Trump in the worst light possible during this campaign. But the race being as close as it has been, it just makes it hard for them to figure out what's going on. I mean, how nervous do you think the media, the mainstream media, are about this election?
Yeah, I mean, people don't understand about this is that, if Trump wins, which it now looks increasingly convincingly like he's going to win, the whole Democrat thing is going to have to undergo a rethink, right? I mean, they think this should have been a gimme as far as they are concerned, right? You're running against Trump again. It's the 3rd time you run against him. America hates him. He's a traitor. January 6th, this, that, and the other, right? And you're losing, right? And you're going to lose, okay? So that means that the Democrats and their partners in crime, are going to have to take a look around the room and say, like, who really helped us here and who didn't? And, the press, the value of the press, the way the press imputes value to itself is by its ability to deliver at times like this, to trash the Republican candidate enough and glorify the Democratic candidate enough to push them over the finish line for the Democrat to win. So if Trump, all the stuff that the media and the courts and the Democrats themselves threw at Trump, he still wins, right? Then all those people's value is diminished, right? And the math that has to emerge from the Democrat Party is going to have to be substantially different than it is now. Coalition has to look substantially different than it does now, because what they have now will not work, right? They can't, it's not. This should have been a hothouse condition for growth for them, and it wasn't, right? They're going backwards. They're losing in voter registration. They're losing in early ballot requests. They're losing in candidate enthusiasm. They're losing, like you have Wisconsin. Hovde has come from 11 or 12 points down in the last 2 months, now leads by 1 point in the Senate race over incumbent Tammy Baldwin. So, everything they're doing is losing. They're falling behind. So Mike Rogers has a chance in Michigan now. So, they can't, in Cook Political Report, ABC News have said Senate's almost certainly going Republican. House is probably going to stay Republican. So, I mean, your chances of us, on Polymarket now, the most popular choice is Democrat sweep, right? Is Democrats getting all 3. It's only like 22, 23%, but that's now the top betting choice, is that the Democrats will sweep. So, a lot of things are going bad. I mean, not the Democrats, Republicans will sweep. So a lot of things are going bad for them, right? And at some point, some adult has to stand up and say, guys, what we're doing here does not work, right? And we can either continue to fail or start figuring out how we're going to change. And I think, what's coming after this election with the Democrats will be really interesting because, they tried to go left, hardcore left. There's nothing there. They tried to look centrist while not really being. They lost ground. It's like, their bench is extremely shallow, as we saw during this. They ended up with Tim Walz as their vice president. There's no one. You look at their party. It's like, who is their next generation of leaders? Newsom is spoiled, damaged goods. I don't think he can be it. So I don't know what they're going to do. I think that they're going to have to look at like which leaders are successful, how do they do it, and how do they create more of that.
Yeah, didn't Trump call him Newscum yesterday?
yeah, that's what he usually calls him.
Yeah, John Mickleway from Bloomberg is it's Newsom. It's Newscom. Yeah, Newscom.
Yeah, and the guy, he punked the Bloomberg guy.
Oh yeah. No,
was,
I mean, I thought he had some pretty good lines in there to go back at the guy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He chopped that guy up pretty good. And the thing about it is, Trump was right. He's like, you're wrong about it. Yeah, no, I was right. You were wrong, and Wall Street Journal was wrong too.
Yeah, that's the thing about Trump is that, in like that interview, he does say that with some conviction, right?
Yeah,
he doesn't really waver. He says, "No, you're wrong. I was right."
yeah, and the guy's like, he's not ready for that, right? He doesn't have anything in his bag for that one. For you're wrong. Your guy sat here before you was wrong. Your competitors, they're wrong too.
Yeah, I may not agree with everything that Trump says, but I got to give him credit for the way he handled that yesterday overall.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I was a little nervous. I get a little nervous when he gets into those things because I never know where the heck he's going to go. And these liberals they can be pretty good at trolling and trying to poke the bear and find the right thing to. It doesn't take a whole lot to set Trump off.
But the best one of those was the NABJ, and the woman comes to her first question is, given that you've done this racist thing and that racist thing and this racist thing and that racist thing and this racist thing and that racist thing, on and on and on, how can you say you're not a racist? And I'm like, okay, what does he say to that, right? Because it's like, are you going to really litigate that whole list of stuff she said? And Trump goes, that's just a nasty way to start an interview. No, how you doing? You keep me back there 30 minutes late, and then you start off with this. So like, he doesn't have to answer that question. That question's off the board, right? It's the person attacking him, making him late, and then attacking him. We've switched the issue from all the stuff she wanted to complain about to him saying, that's nasty, man. And the whole audience is going, yeah, that was pretty nasty. The whole audience of people who also hate it are like, yeah, he's right.
That's right. All right. Well, we're close enough to the finish. Let's go ahead and just run this out. Take us out.
Let me see what we have on our list that we did not cover. The Bill Clinton. So they rolled Bill Clinton out to do events for. And the first thing he says is that, yeah, Laken Riley was killed by someone she let in the country. Hey, thanks, Bill. I think you're supposed to say the opposite. Harris she's gotten a Fox News interview. I believe that will be the 7 softest questions she faces. I mean, I don't know. I think she will. Brett Baer will put Stephanie Rule to shame for obsequiousness. And that's a nice trick on her part to appear to be sitting for a hostile interview when it's a lapdog who wants you to win. Really kind of a despicable deal. I'm glad Whitmer apologized for the Dorito ad. Quit making fun of my church. Right? Enough. Right? It's time to stop. You're gonna lose. She's gonna lose this race because she's gonna lose Catholics. That's a big thing. In Pennsylvania, it's almost a fifth of the vote is Catholics, and they've done everything they can to kick sand in our face. I hope our Catholic friends in Pennsylvania will remember that. I have no idea what North Korea is up to by blowing up the roads out, and I think their quadrennial distrust of Russia is exploding. And yeah, I do think the Redskins will win the NFC East. The other teams appear to be incompetent. All
right. Thank you for everyone for joining us today. Hope as always, please stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.